Video games are a time-consuming hobby.
A way to feel real and alive again.
Even short games take hours to complete. But there are games out there which really, truly test your ability to stay with something. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Gameranx, 10 games so long we struggled to finish them. Starting off with number 10, it's Assassin's Creed Valhalla leading up to release. The developers behind the third game in the RPG trilogy of Assassin's Creed games made it sound like their next game is going to be more streamlined, more focused compared to the sprawling bloat of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It was a common complaint that game was too long. I don't think that that's really even that controversial. And in some ways, Valhalla does actually streamline. Like a lot of the little side quests, they're shorter, a little more self-contained, but literally everything else about the game is somehow longer than anyone could possibly imagine. Listen, guys, I'm like the ideal Assassin's Creed fan, all right? I've played all of the games to completion, except maybe a couple of them. I've done all the tedious open world tasks. I've played it endlessly. I can tell you I love the shorter, earlier, more contained experiences. I love the RPG open world experiences. But Valhalla, okay, is too damn long. It's not the absurd amount of optional content like Odyssey. It's the amount of stuff you have to do to actually progress the story. Let me break it down, okay? The point of the game is to form alliances with these different regions of England, right? There's 16 in total. Each one has its own story, multiple missions attached, the whole 9 yards, right? In most games, Odyssey included, you don't necessarily have to complete every single region to actually complete the story. Like at least a few of these places would normally be optional in one of these games, right? Not in Valhalla. Oh no, not in Valhalla. All 16 regions, plus the 2 in Norway, plus Finland, you gotta go through all of them. The only optional ones are the mythological areas, and yeah, there's an entire huge Norse pantheon side quest with 2 of its own areas.
My thoughts are clouded with shadows of doom. Even this peaceful valley seems to hold hidden dangers.
Like, at least you're not forced to do that. I mean, I feel like at some point they were planning on making the Asgard segments required, but someone had a sanity check, because holy crap, if they did that on top of everything you have to do, nobody would finish this. Listen, I like long games. Most of the time, a game's length is not an impediment to enjoying it for me. But Valhalla was really trying my patience, like the 15th forgettable Failson Lord. Oh, I don't know how to be a lord. The other lords they're bullying me. Please help. Jesus Christ. Their petty squabbles do not concern me. And there's 16. There's 16 of them. If the game even made it so you only had to do like 75% of the areas instead of literally all of them, why would it be a lot more tolerable? But it's a slog. Yes, Assassin's Creed Odyssey had way too many side quests, but they were optional. Valhalla made a bunch of side quest quality content and made it the main quests. And this is a game that I like. I am not shitting on Valhalla as a game that I dislike. I am shitting on it as a game that I like, though. It's a game that could have been a lot better had they not done this. Don't tell me you're not exhausted after beating Valhalla. At number 9 is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Man, remember when people complained about how the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 was overlong and bloated? Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Remake managed to stretch about 5, maybe 10 hours of gameplay, depending on exactly how hungry for content you are, or, you know, how bad you are, tactically speaking. I don't know. But it's like 5 hours of gameplay and about 20, 30 hours of content. But nothing compares to what Rebirth has. Takes about 15 hours of, to be frank, meandering around a world map and transforms it into a 100-hour epic. It's not just the padded out story either. It's the open world checklist, the minigames, the endless, the minigames. There's so many of the minigames.
It's almost like your muscles are singing.
You're both so stunning.
And you have to understand, this is again a game I like. This is a game I like actually a lot more than I like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I love Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That does not mean there are not too many mini games in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. There are. You go to the Golden Saucer in this one, so in a way it makes sense, but having mini games all over the place in a casino, that makes sense. Costa del Sol doesn't. What? Why am I playing soccer and doing target practice and card puzzle game? Why am I doing all of this at the beach where I should be, doing all the things that Will Smith composed the lyrics of his seminal smash hit in the 90s, Miami, about? I should be doing those things. At least most of the Force games they make you play are actually pretty fun. Some of the optional ones connected to the Proto-Relic side quest are just frickin' miserable, though. I do not know what is going on with the robot programming game. The Fort Condor stuff, I didn't like in the original game, and I really don't like it here. But really the biggest issue isn't that some of the games aren't good. It's that most of it's fine or even great. In isolation, there's just too much of it. Don't try to be a completionist with the Final Fantasy remakes. If you can go through and just kind of do the story, they're actually, incredible. Save the other stuff for, if you want to play later. And number 8 is Alien Isolation. The game doesn't have to be a sprawling 100-plus hour open world epic to be maybe a little too long to handle. Alien Isolation only takes about 22 hours to finish the first time through. That's relatively short, actually, for games these days. The difference is that this is a horror game. They're usually pretty short by design, but Isolation's a game that really just keeps going and going. Feels like well past the point where it's feels like it's going to end, Sometimes going past its traditional ending point is intriguing, but the problem is that Alien Isolation's bag of tricks has kind of run out by that point. You've seen the alien, you've seen the humans and the robots. You got all your gear at that point. All that's left is just more. And what's impressive about Isolation is that even given all that, it still manages to be scary. But in a way, that's also kind of part of the problem. You kind of want to come up for air at a certain point, but the game just doesn't let you. The last few hours are as intense as any other part of the game, and it really can start to wear you out after a while. The peaks and valleys of the game kind of fade away, and it's just all peaks. It's exhausting. You can't say this game doesn't give you your money's worth, and in a lot of ways, it's a masterpiece. But I get where people are coming from when they complain about the length. It's just a little long for a horror game.
I ain't dying here. No way. Is that what
And number 7 is Yakuza 5. It's weird, even with the epic length of the most recent games the series has, they don't feel as long as Yakuza 5. For a while in this game, it legitimately feels endless. It's not, of course. It's actually a little shorter than Infinite Wealth, but man, it just keeps going and going. It's got 4 playable characters, each with their own city to explore, and a huge storyline that's at least as long as one of the side games like Gaiden, but they all have side stories too. It's a really long game, stuffed full of content. And while it's a better game overall than the divisive Yakuza 4, it's got more than one boring part. The first character you play as is Kiryu. His story's mostly done after that. And while some characters have pretty interesting plots or are fun characters in their own right, they have some designated boring parts. I'm sure some people probably weren't too excited to stop the story dead in its tracks to focus on Hakuru's side quest to become a pop star. Huge chunk of the game is dedicated to a story that's 90% unrelated to anything going on. Zero combat encounters, and it's not short. It's maybe a little shorter than the other chapters, but that doesn't make it short. And it's also not shorter by much. And did we really just do Seijima's story from Yakuza 4 again? It's another prison break, at least, a more interesting one with a more interesting location. But seriously, another prison section that goes on for too long. Yakuza 5 has its highs and lows. It's got some amazing bits, but it's too long. And number 6 is Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl. Did they really need to make this open world shooter take over 100 hours to complete? I'm not talking about 100% completion here. I just mean finishing the game normally. Compare this one with something like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. That game's super long. It's 100 plus hours. It doesn't feel as long as Stalker 2, and that's for, a few reasons. For one thing, Stalker 2 barely has fast travel. Sure, you can hire a guy to take you to a few safe places instantly, but that's super limited compared to the size of the map. It's like how in Skyrim you can only fast travel between Winterhold and Whiterun or Markarth. But halfway through the game, somebody blows up Markarth, and oh yeah, you still need to run back and forth between these areas anyway. Also, fast travel is expensive. You can only move at half speed because you're over encumbered, blah, blah, blah. The weight limit in Stalker 2 is brutal. Man, there's so many times you're forced to walk these massive distances at excruciatingly slow speeds because you got too much loot, which is like a one extra AK-47 and 5 cans of tuna. And you're like, oh my God, all this tuna. Oh, what am I to do? What am I to do now with all this tuna? Oh, I'm sorry. This is a game where it takes forever to do anything, and it's also extremely long. Like, the story just keeps going and going. You think you're reaching some kind of conclusion, and then it goes on for like 30 more hours. It is impressive how big they were able to make this thing. The size of the map it's impressive, but it's too much. Maybe if they gave us something to speed things up, like a decent carry weight or a few more fast travel points. But in the game's current state, it's a slog. And number 5 is Pathfinder Kingmaker, Owlcat's first foray into CRPGs. A little too ambitious for its own good. You gotta respect the hustle, but even for a CRPG, this thing stretched to the absolute breaking point. Just keeps going. And it's got that vicious combination of having extreme difficulty spikes, some confusing long-term gameplay systems like the entire kingdom building aspect that's both kind of baffling and extremely important. And the length, it's truly epic. Like, not in the value assignment version of epic, but like the more traditional definition of epic. The devs were aware the game was too long. They tried to make their follow-up game shorter, not by a ton, but stuff like Rogue Trader it's closer to 100 hours rather than 120. To still make crazy long games, but there's a fine line between long and too long, and Kingmaker crosses it. And number 4 is Persona 5 Royale. The length of a game can be funny sometimes. Some games can stretch for over 100 hours and still not feel all that padded. And for me, that's Persona 5. At least that's how I felt before they updated the game with Royale content, and that adds an extra 20 or so hours to the end of the game. What's important here is that all that new content is at the end. So you want to see it. You got to get through that first 100 hours again. If you've already played the original version. No save transfers here, no quick start options. If you want to see the new ending, start over. Yeah, Persona 5 is too damn long. Even if you fast forward through all the dialogue and skip all the cutscenes, which has new content sprinkled into the base game as well, so you don't really want to miss it. Takes a solid 40-something hours to get through the game, and that's if you know what you're doing, including how to actually unlock the new content, which is not something you just do. That would be too easy. I'm sure a lot of people will complain that Persona 5 was too long, but Royale made it even longer and asked people who already wasted 100 hours of their lives playing through the base game to do it again, which if you didn't consider it a waste, and I didn't, it makes you consider the second time through a waste. I love this game, but I've beaten it once. It was fortunately Royale that I beat. I stopped when I found out that Royale was happening, but yeah.
No Persona! Get him, Joker!
Go down!
Everyone else, head to
Let's
position.
go.
Use Route B.
Ravage them! Useless. There!
Pull out before their backup gets here.
And number 3 is Crosscode. Usually these indie RPGs you can expect to run on the shorter side, and for a lot of people that's a big part of their appeal. Crosscode appears to be no different. It's probably going to be like 5 hours, 3 dungeons, bing bang boom, no problem. Wait, it's 50 hours? Yeah, it's not even a turn-based RPG, though, which can, waste time like nobody's business. This is an action RPG. Those are usually pretty fast-paced. Crosscode isn't exactly padded, but it's long as hell. Far longer than most indies at the price they're charging for it. And while that may be a pleasant surprise for some, the epic length of this game is a lot to take in. And even I have to admit that final dungeon, by that time, I was out of breath, let's say. It's commendable for someone's first indie game to come out this big and feature complete, but they could have tightened it up a little bit more. It would have been just a little less exhaustion to get through and probably would have left a better impression. Not that it leaves a bad one. And number 2 is Dragon Quest VII. The original overlong behemoth of an RPG, Dragon Quest VII, was a PlayStation 1 game that did not have great graphics like the Final Fantasy games, but what it did have is an absolutely absurd length, and for a long time was famous for having the longest script ever written for a game. Now, the PlayStation 1 original easily dragged on for over 100 hours owing to its extremely episodic story. The objective is that you're restoring the world one island at a time. Each location has its own story arc that is all, no surprise here, very long and drawn out. There are a lot of islands to get through. Eventually you get done, but man, a lot of islands. It's so long it takes 2-3 hours to fight a monster. It takes more than a dozen hours before you eventually unlock the job system. 12, half of a day. Start of this game is so insanely slow. The pacing does not get a lot better either. It's generally a slow and drawn out game, which makes progression feel even more drawn out and padded than it is. The 3DS version is a lot more tolerable in that regard. It's also a lot shorter. They cut the game down by like 20 hours, speeding up the dialogue and loading times and streamlining a few parts of the game. But before everyone was trying to make their games 100 plus hours, Dragon Quest VII was kind of an anomaly even for a console game. But being really long doesn't automatically make a game good, especially when they're as tedious as this one can be. And finally, at number 1, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. So you love Monster Hunter World, you're ravenous for more, so you check out the newest game released on the Switch, a re-release of Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, an old-school version of Monster Hunter with a mind-boggling amount of content. That was me, and I bet there were a lot of you out there too. It's a great game, even if it takes some getting used to after all the streamlining that the next-gen Monster Hunter games had, but man, does it keep going. When does it end? It doesn't, actually. It doesn't. You can beat the main story, but that's barely scratching the surface when it comes to these games, especially here when like 70% of the content is literally after you finish the main story. The monsters never stop. 100%ing this game is 800 plus hours. I haven't fought every monster. I don't know anybody who has. It's just one thing after another. An infinite well of Monster Hunter content. It's nuts how much they managed to pack into this one game. It's impressive, but screw actually doing everything. It just keeps getting harder. They keep introducing more stuff. The grind keeps getting longer and longer. If you've got any sense, you'll tap out long before the end. But hey, you got your money's worth. It's got 93 giant monsters total. That's 65 cents per monster. You're probably not going to see like a third of them, but that's pretty good, right? That's all for today, though. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter and book me on Cameo, @FalconTheHero. We'll see you next time right here on Gameranx.